Welcome back to the channel. Today is June 26, 2026, and I am looking at Stellar Lumens, the or ticker symbol XLM on the 3-month Coinbase chart. Before we get started, I am an amateur trader and investor. I have a day job that doesn't involve finance. So therefore, as I'm going through these charts, please keep in mind that I probably don't have the nuance of a professional. However, what I like to do is just go over the charts, tell you what I see, and if this helps you research this token more or look at other ideas or other publishers out there of how they're viewing the charts, then I think I've accomplished what I want to accomplish. So the last time I talked about XLM, it was May 27th, and I said uh, we got to look for more sideways action or a slight downside in the near future. And unfortunately, that has kind of happened. XLM has been trending downwards, and it is getting to uh, a new support zone, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But before going over that, I feel that I didn't see something in the past, and sometimes that happens. The first glance that you have at a chart, you sometimes miss stuff, and I think that's what pretty much happened in this case. Is I missed something, so I want to go over what I missed and then kind of give a summary of what I think we're going to have to do in the future. So the first thing I want to look at is we have this. Keep in mind we're on the 3-month chart, so we're looking at a long period of time history. We have a clear now downside trend line, and if you look at this trend line here, back in after the very first bull run of XLM, where it got to here, it came down, touched this trend line on January sometime in 2020, had its second bull run to stop there, and then came all the way down and touched this trend line again. And this was July 2024. And this is our last bull run where we're now in the bear market, where you can see that XLM is going down. Now, you also see that there's a trend line here. You have 3 touches, and this is an upward support resistance line. Right now, obviously, it's resistance. And with these 2 trend lines together, we're forming what's called a wedge pattern. And typically, how wedge patterns play out is they either go like this. They don't have to get to the very end. Sometimes they break up, and sometimes they break down. Okay. You can't tell from this wedge pattern which option is going to happen. Normally, though, I will say this, it's more likely to break to the side that it touches the most and hammers the most. So as you can see right now, we have 3 touches up here, and this only has 2, but we are getting to a point where we may touch it again on the bounce time, so it would be equal balance. So it doesn't really give us a good idea right now of which way it's going to go. Now, I am going to, let's see here. What we're going to do is let's jump down a little. So we're at the 3 months, so we're going to go to the monthly channel now, or the monthly chart. And I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. You now see that we have more touches on here. We have 1 touch here. It kind of touched a couple of times, sort of going up. And you can kind of see how this chart is starting to get to get closer or whatever. Now, one of the things I want to show you on the monthly is back in May we had some bullish news about XLM that is going to be hosting the tokenized assets for the DTCC. That was very bullish news, but since then it's kind of struggled to keep that price, and we're now doing something that's called inside bar action. That's where I'll just throw this up here. Uh, that is where you have your high of this last candle, and you have the hot low of this candle, and price action trades between this candle. Now, I don't know, uh, if the next candle of XLM is going to break up or it's going to break down. I do want to mention that this candle isn't quite yet formed. It has 4 days left because this is a monthly channel candle. But if things continue as they are, that means we could see some sideways action inside this particular candle. And I do not know how long it would take to either break below that or to break above that, but that's something that you want to see. So the top of this candle is 30 cents. The bottom of this candle is 13 cents, or actually, let's call that 14. It's more it's like 14 cents. Okay, so let's get rid of this. And let's bring up, let's see. Let's bring this up. Okay. Now, one thing that's interesting is what I wanted to show here is if we drop to the weekly chart, uh, we're starting to form a shorter, higher trend line. Now, as you can see, this started probably about February 2026. And even though price shot up with this big candle that was we were just looking at, as you can see, price has inside bar, coming down to this trend line. Now, the next question is, since this has held as a resistance since February 2026, does this actually stop XLL from going further down, or will it kind of go up? Or we could see, like I said, as you can tell by these previous candles, let me see if I can bring that trend line up. We'll look at this. You see, this is a much longer trend line that's been, since about August of 2023. We jumped above it during the last bull market. And since we've been in the bear market, we've come back down to it. And we've held this particular trend line since about February as well. So what's really been going on is we have this channel here where, and I'm just going to explode this a little bit so it's easier to see. Okay. Price has been going in between these two markers. And the question is now that we had pushed above this trend line as resistance, is this trend line now going to hold as support? The better, the ideal thing that we want as XLM is, okay, this trend line holds as support, and then, it starts making its way back up to the trend line and hopefully get across it. That would be what we'd want to see. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. All right. Now, with these two trend lines, something else is kind of interesting. Let me bring this back here. Okay. We have another wedge pattern forming in the sense of we have this zone here. We have this wedge pattern here. This is now a resistance. And if we drop this to the daily, okay, it's still pretty much the same. There's more touches on it. You usually want to have at least 3 touches on a trend line. And right now, I would say that this is weak sauce trend line, but it does seem to be give us an idea of where price is going. Because I see technically maybe 3 touches. And, the trend line gets stronger as more and more touches get into it. As you can tell with this daily chart, see, look how many times at these peaks of these pivot points it tried to get over this area and it couldn't. And now we're still in this area going on the downside, and we're kind of stuck right now. And you see how after it hit that, you see this candle here. Let me zoom into it even closer. Okay. You see how this wick is long here? When it tried to, push through this particular resistance zone, see how the buying pushed up, and so the candle, instead of going further and closing below this support zone, it was pushed off of it. And so that's what I mean by support and resistance, and looking at these candles to kind of see, well, what's it trying to tell us. Now, okay, I'm going to go back here. Now, one of the things that so that's all very fine and good. So what can we expect from XLM in the near future? Okay. Well, if we go over here and let me take this off and let's see here. Change my chart. Let me see. Let's do this one here. Okay. All right. Now, let me close this here. If we look at the RSI and I'm going to change this to the weekly here, and you see on the weekly we did get oversold, and this was back in March of 2026. And since then we've risen, but we never reached overbought. But at the moment, because of this resistance line here, and the momentum going down on the weekly, see, so this is the RSI. It measures overbought, oversold. It never got to overbought. Overbought is above 70. Oversold is below 30. On the weekly, it's now sitting at 46, but you can see that we are going in a downward pattern. Now you can draw trend lines on RSIs, and we got kind of like a trend like this. And the question is the RSI going to stay above this trend line and kind of do this where it goes do like that, or is it going to drop through the trend line and go back to oversold? That is something we need to keep a lookout for in the next month or so. Does it edge more to coming back here, or does it pop up? So that's something we have to look out there. But this is bearish at the moment. The RSI is pointing down, and it seems to be wanting to go back and touch this trend line. Maybe if it touches this trend line and then goes up, I guess you could say that's bearish, but bullish. But that's just something to keep in mind. On the stochastic RSI, which measures momentum, we crossed the 20, and then in the above 80, we started to move back down. The blue line closed, which is the fast moving average, closed above the slower line, and now we're headed down. Now, are we going to make it all the way back under 20? It's too early to tell. Sometimes you do see things like this where you see how this one came up here, never went below the 20, then went up. You can have instances where it kind of reverses midstream too. You see this where it came down here and then tagged and kept on going up. So it's never just, oh, it went below 90, now it's going to 20. Just something to keep an eye out for. Now, let's see. We look at the money flow index. It went to overbought. And this was on that candle. So when it got all the way up here, the money flow index said, yeah, based on volume to price, I think XLM is overbought. And this is another way to measure overbought, oversold. It has to do with volume and price. And right now we're sitting at about 50, and it too is pointing downward. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, if I go over here to the ADX, and as you can see, before this big candle, we had more selling of XLM than buying of XLM. And then once that news came out, okay, just before the news came out, the buying was over here. It was well below the selling, and then boom, after the bullish news, it crossed above it, and now the selling's starting to increase and the buying is starting to go down. So we got to keep a close eye on that, on whether we're going to have another cross where the selling overtakes the buying. Now, if we look at the momentum, this is the ADX, just measures momentum. It doesn't measure, It's not. Keep in mind whether it's going up or down. That is nothing related to the current price. It's strictly the momentum gauge of how fast the momentum is. Okay, so as you can see, during this time, let's see. Even though we were in a bear market, it said, let's see, before this candle, it was at 29, and then since then, it is now at 31. Okay, so like I said, this candle doesn't really, this particular line here, this white line, doesn't care about which direction you're going. But before the big pop, its bearish trend was 29. Now, to be in a trend, you have to be 20 or above. Because the ADX is at 29, and again, it doesn't care. All it's really trying to say is do I think the price is ranging, or do I think it is actually trending? And so the ADX is trying to say, no, it's trending, but it's to the downside. We had this big push up, it started to slowly come up, but now look at how fast it's going down. So right now we're sitting at about 31. And so that means that to the ADX, we're in a trending market, but unfortunately, we can tell from the price action that we are going down. So that is something to keep an eye on. Okay. Now, the reason why I bring this up is I want to just give my final thoughts on XLM for right now on today of June 26th and what we can kind of count to in the future. I'm going to go back to this chart here. Actually, no, let's do this one. Okay. And this is the daily chart. And what I want to show you is, and maybe I should, let's also do this. Okay. So I mentioned that we are in a wedge pattern, and I'm going to take this away here. And because of this wedge pattern, we're expecting price to keep on going in between these two marks. But we are coming up, not pretty soon, but in the near future, there's a possible interest point coming up here. I'm drawing the trend lines this way for a certain reason. So this looks like it would intersect December 2026. This is the bottom trend line. And then this is the upper trend line, and this is uh, saying that it is January of 2028, a month later. So this is, oh no, that's not a month later. Geez, that's like a year later. Okay, all right. So if nothing changes, okay, and XLM just keeps on sideways actioning like this, okay, on this particular trend line. In other words, this trend line holds the support, and XLM fails to break above this trend line or retouch it, then around January of the year 2028, it will have to make a decision. It will either start another bull run and make its way up, or it will break out of this channel and make its way down. Now, obviously, that is too far in the future to know to know the signs to see if it will uh, which direction it would probably go. But that's just something to keep in mind. If the price, we know that we're trending, not heavily, but definitely we're trending in the bearish side. If the if the if this this support zone breaks, then we're coming back down to here, okay, and this would be around the 13 cents area again. And if it does this, okay, then that means here, all right, this intersection point says this is January of 2027. And once we hit this line here, there's a very good likelihood that we start another bull run and we go, hopefully, touch this line. Now, if we do touch that line, the question is there going to be enough steam to get above it? I'm not going to make any price predictions. I don't see anything in the chart that gives me any evidence that we we're going to be able to do that. We'd have to look at it closer to when we get to this top of this trend line. But from this point, if it does have its bull market starting in January of 2027, then that would be about a, let's see if it does it at this point. That'd be about a 258% gain. Okay, which isn't shabby. So we're gonna remove that, and we'll remove this, and we'll remove this. Okay. All right. Those are two possibilities of what could happen in the future. Again, at any point, maybe some whale comes in and spikes it up. We don't know, but those are two options that you want to kind of look for. I'm going to go back here to on this weekly. I'm going to bring up the 20 moving average, and I'm going to bring up the 50, and I'm going to bring up the 200. Okay. The 200 is kind of going up. 200 is relatively flat. It's kind of going up and down on this weekly chart. As you can see, the 50 is up here, and you see the 20 here. Well, here's the thing: if XLM keeps side chopping, okay, either dropping down here and going sideways, or dropping down here and going sideways. Look at this 50. Okay, this is the weekly chart, keep in mind. Okay, all right, so let's just say that it keeps on going down like this. What this means is at some point, if the 200 keeps its current trajectory, then about January of 2027, when it gets close to, if price keeps going sideways, it's more likely we will probably have what's called a death cross. And what that death cross would mean is that we can expect the price to drop below the wedge and go downwards. How far? No idea. But usually what happens is when you break out of a wedge, I'll show you here. There's two schools of thought. Okay. Some traders, and I don't know which one I believe more. I'm going to go to the monthly to kind of show this a little bit. Usually you take from your wedge pattern, you go here to here, and you want wherever the break occurs, whether it's here or here, that would be your price target of how far it's going to fall. I prefer this method. I don't know if it's any more valid. I've only seen wedges break, but they typically don't go the full length of the wedge, but it becomes very, very close. So the next option is you take from where the price movement started, so that would be here, and you draw this down like this, and then you take this candle, and let's say if it broke down here, you'd be looking at about 0.0018 cents, and if it broke here, you'd be looking at 0.0258 cents. That's a possibility too. But with the wedge pattern, it usually just comes to about right here. So this is just a guesstimate. And so, if it's there, then it would probably be around here. The same with the long one. It usually doesn't make it all the way down, but it comes fairly close. It just gives you a gauge of where you really want to look out for. Okay. But if it breaks to the upside, okay, and it breaks up, for example, here, then you're looking at $3.72. So it just depends on what XLM is going to do. Okay. So that's the weekly perspective. And let's see. Let's go back here to the daily. Uh, okay. From a daily perspective, let's see. We got the 20 here, and we got the 50. Okay. You notice how the 50 is below the 20. That's usually a good sign. However, the 20 looks like it's going to cross the 50 here pretty soon. And then you have your 200, and that is probably too small. So let's just explode this. And maybe again. Let's explode it again. Okay. So you've got your 200 relatively flat on the daily chart. It is going down though. You've got your 50, which crossed it. That's actually considered a what they call a golden cross. However, keep in mind if you look at this particular moving average, it's not significant. Maybe if it was right here, I'd say, oh, okay, that's a golden cross. That means the price is going to go up. Okay. However, right now, here's what I suspect is going to happen, and I am going to just make. I'm going to get rid of the 20, 200, and I'm going to get rid of the 50. Okay, is right now XLM has done this. It had a look how far the price got above the 20. I think I've talked about this before that the price has to stay somewhat close to the 20. Otherwise, it can have harder drops. And that's exactly what's happened here. The price got so far from the 20 that XLM had a very sharp drop. It got, it exploded again. Okay. And it didn't get as far from the 20 as it did before, but it was still enough to give it a sharper drop. Okay. If this particular support holds, this is what we want as far as a very bullish case uh, for XLM. We want XLM to bounce off this trend line, maybe do something like this, and do something like this, and then we want it to range here. So what we would want to do is essentially have XLM range at a higher point. Okay, that would be the bullish case of XLM. The more XLM stays ranging at this lower point, the more you're going to see selling, and the more likely you're going to break to the downside of the wedge. So I'm going to bring back let's go back to the weekly here, maybe even the monthly. Let's do that. And then let's explode this. So what we would like XLM to do is it's reached this point here before. If XLM can come up here, let's see, let me bring the right tool up here. I'll just use a trend line. If XLM can start a new trend where it gets past this candle top and breaks the inside bar trading, breaks it here, and then starts ranging here, this would be very bullish for XLM, and it would be more likely that we're going to break to the upside. Okay. However, if XLM continues to sideways action here uh, for years and years and years, I just don't see. I don't know how. I think it's more likely we're going to go to the downside and break below the channel. So that's what we want to keep our eye on for is that currently right now we are in this inside bar. Okay, that's at about the top of it's about 25 cents, 26 cents. The bottom of it is about 14 cents. And we want to see if XLM can break out of this inside bar and then start trading at about, 27 cents and up. That would be a more bullish move to break above this upper wedge. And when it breaks above the upper wedge, then that's where you can expect the real fun price points to happen. Because that would be a price point, like I said, down here to about probably over here. I'm not going to make price predictions, but you see where that's sort of sitting at. That's sitting at $3.79. I have no clue whether it's going to get up there. Please don't take that as a price prediction. But all I'm just telling you is to reach those upper heights, we first have to, in the short term, and when I mean short term, probably next couple of months. So for the next couple of months, we want XLM to push trading higher around this 26 to 27 area instead of going down here. Now, if XLM doesn't range and it tanks right here, then that means you could have an explosive bull run. If this holds a support, you could have a very big push off here, and you would get about a 300% gain, and then we'd have to see as we get closer whether it has enough steam to break that trend line. So that's where I'm going to leave us today. That's what you want to look for in the future. Um, uh, Please keep in mind that as you're considering buying this particular asset, I am invested in XLM, by the way. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. Uh, where do you want to start investing money? I am a longer term trader. I'm not looking for these for very short gains, or riding waves, as they say. When I say riding waves, I mean like a very short term wave, like a swing trader does. As far as buy points is, I would set a buy limit here at 14, but whenever you set that buy limit, you may want to consider that this is your kind of your stop loss area. I currently don't have a stop loss set up, but this is what I'm going to be watching for closely. Is if we break down below this wedge, then I'm going to exit my XLM position. And uh, I don't have a stop loss, but that's probably what I'm going. That's probably what I'm going to do. However, if we continue to do this inside bar action for a while, I'm probably going to keep putting some money about right here. But what would be really bullish for me is if we start trading above this particular large candle we had, and we're at 25 to 27 cents, okay, and we start trading up here, that's where I'm going to be starting putting way more money, because that is essentially XLM using this support area as a way to rest. I think if you're doing a long hike, it's resting at this point, and I think that would give it the enough rest to have the energy to push above this particular top trend line. So that's it. I hope God blesses your day, and please, any decisions you make, I really think you should take it to the Lord, and ask for guidance, and uh, don't bet everything on a single asset. Also, any money that you're investing, make sure it's like your play money, okay? Not your, I need to live and eat, survive, and feed my kids money. Okay, that's all I have to say. Have a blessed day.